to see all of you today. So y'all are in for a real treat today. We have two HR directors from Aldine ISD. So I want to introduce them to you and tell you a little bit about their background. Raul Fonseca, he's a graduate of Bowling Green State University in Ohio. He began his teaching career in Aldine in 1992 as a middle school teacher. After 7 years, he became an assistant principal at a middle school, and then he was moved to an assistant principal for curriculum and instruction. He spent a total of 7 years as an assistant principal and then became a principal. From there, he moved into human resources. He's currently the director of HR director responsible for all intermediate and middle schools. So he's been in that position for 4 years. Jeff McKenna is also a director of human resources. He began his teaching career again in the middle school in Aldine ISD. He taught for 4 years before he moved to an elementary school as an assistant principal, and then as the curriculum and instruction assistant principal at an intermediate school. In 1997, he moved into the role of principal at an intermediate campus for 5 years, and then in 2003, he began his career in human resources, first in elementary schools, and then with intermediate and middle schools, and now 9th grade centers and high school campuses. So please join me in welcoming these two gentlemen.
Good afternoon, everybody. How you doing? I thought it would be a little bit more enthusiastic than that. I mean, aren't we at A&M? Aren't you guys supposed to say something? Okay, so I want to start with the beginning towards the end. I want to just let you know at the end of this conversation, I talked to Janet, one of the things that I wanted to do. I got to admit, I'm kind of nervous talking to such a big group like this. I mean, we came in here and Jeff and I were like, oh my gosh, we've got, what, about 250, almost 300 people in here? So what I want to do is at the very end of this conversation, I'm going to take a picture of all of you, a video, and you're going to show me your Aggie spirit so I can prove to my 9th grade daughter at home that A&M is where she needs to come to school, right? Can you guys do that for me at the end? Okay, so I'm going to do that. So you guys got to make sure that you give me all your enthusiasm. Well, Jeff and I have a couple of goals that we want to try to accomplish. This is something that we do with a lot of our university partners. First of all, let's get started by asking how many of you know where Aldine is? Hey, okay, we've got a good start. Well, for those of you who don't know where Aldine is, we are the 4th largest school district in the Houston area. We are a school district of 65,000 students. We have roughly close to almost 5,000 teachers spread over 74 campuses. So we're not really here to talk to you as much about Aldine as we are to talk to you about what we want to do to help you get prepared as teachers. Because we know that you guys are coming through a very, very scary time in your life where you're going to make that transition from being a college student to going out in the professional world. And people, it is different. It's no more sleeping in until 8 o'clock. Did you guys sleep in until 8 o'clock, or is that waking up early? I don't know. But anyways, what we want to try to do is we want to try to talk to you about what it's going to be like going into the professional world as a teacher, especially talking about what's going to happen here with student teaching as you start making your decision about where you want to go. We're also going to try to hit up a little bit more on what you need to start doing now to prepare yourself to set yourself apart from your peers if you ultimately want to get a job. Because Jeff and I are going to talk to you as human resources directors, because one part of our job is to look at all of those resumes and make the determination why you should be a good fit for our district. And there are a lot of things that you should be doing right now to get yourself prepared. So hopefully you'll take away some of those key points with you. And then ultimately, at the very end, is we want to talk to you a little bit about what we feel makes our district special. In that many of you have heard about Aldine, but do many of you know that Aldine was recently named as one of the most high-performing urban school districts in the United States? So in order to get this prestigious award, there's got to be some things that we are doing right. And what we want to do is we want to talk to you about the things that our teachers are doing right to affect and to help kids who come from environments that really are not like environments that you're used to. So hopefully all of these things will give you some insight on what you should start doing about taking their profession seriously. And hopefully you'll be able to take away some of these points and make yourself realize that this profession that you're getting into, it's a pretty serious profession when we're starting to talk about kids. Enough said about that. Let me introduce myself a little bit more in detail. Okay, so anyways, as Janet stated, I've been with the district for 21 years. I thought it was kind of funny when we were walking down in front of the Rudder building, they were, I guess they were Greek organizations, and they were asking, 2017, are you guys interested? And she looked at me and she said, 2017? I said, no, 1992. It happened so quick. My first thing that I need to tell you right now is that this is going to be a profession where it's going to go by so quick for you. And in my hindsight, the reason why it went so quick for me is because you're reinventing yourself every year. And you're changing. And things are different. It's not like picking up a briefcase and going to wherever. These are kids. And if you truly have fun, the time is going to fly like that. I can't believe it's 21 years. I'm ready for retirement in 6 more years. I look at where the time has gone. But that's the type of profession that you're getting into. Anyways, long story short, I came from Ohio. I graduated from Bowling Green State University, home of the Fighting Falcons. Anybody ever heard of Bowling Green? Nobody's heard of Bowling Green? Come on. Well, Bowling Green is the university that prepares teachers for the state of Ohio. It's not as big as Texas A&M, but it is a mid-level university, but it's smack dab in the middle of Northwest Ohio. There's not a lot there. I grew up in a small town of about 3,000 people. My graduating class had 88 people in it. And guess where I graduated? 44 out of 88. I came from a family where college really wasn't an expectation. It was kind of like a hope, a wish, a dream. And I did not go the traditional route like many of you have done. I didn't go to college right after high school. I went in the military first, and after going into the military, I got out, then went to college. I didn't really think that I could be a college student and even graduate myself. So when I went through Bowling Green and I actually graduated, the first one in my family to graduate from college, I went to be a teacher because that was the only thing I think I could do, because I had 3 other brothers and I thought, well, I babysit them enough, maybe I might want to do teaching. Little did I know that the profession was going to be a heck of a lot harder than just babysitting kids. The reality sank in. In Ohio, there were no jobs. I remember going to the job fair, and I remember just seeing, since it was the university that produces teachers for Ohio, and there was a surplus of teachers, there were people from all over the United States who came to recruit us. And I just thought that was amazing, that people from Texas, from North Carolina, from South Carolina, from all over the country had come just for us. And I knew that if I wanted to get a job, I was going to have to leave. And there was one particular booth. It was the Aldine booth, where there's one man, an elderly man. Little did I know that he used to be the superintendent. He talked to me a little bit about Aldine, and he said, son, if you're going to make a decision about where you want to go, first of all, got to go where the job is. And that was the reality. And he said the second thing you have to do is you got to go where you're going to make a difference. And I kind of thought about that, and I thought, I never really thought about making a difference. I just thought about teaching. I didn't know anything else other than Northwest Ohio. I didn't know anything else other than my own exposure and what I saw my whole entire life. So I talked to him and I told him I'd be more than willing to come down and interview. And he said, I'd love to have you. Went down to Houston. Long story short, got hired with Aldine. Been with them for 21 years. My first year of teaching, I literally thought, I was a big tough Army guy. I thought that I'd seen everything. I thought that I could handle adversity. I thought that I could handle any challenge that was in front of me. I thought that after 6 weeks I was going to run back home to Ohio with my tail between my legs. Until I met someone who was my mentor, my informal mentor. He wasn't my formal mentor. And funny thing about it was, he was only a teacher of 1 year. He had just finished his first year teaching. And all of those times when I thought that I was going to break down, yeah, literally break down. But anyways, he told me, you know, what you really have to do is you have to stop fighting and start accepting these kids as who they are. And that's when it really, really hit me. Instead of me trying to change the kids, I was the one that had to change. Because you're going to be cursed. I'm telling you right now. You're going to turn into the teacher, and you're going to emulate the teacher that taught you. And that's probably not going to work most of the time. It probably will not work almost all of the time. You have to be a person who is directly motivated to hone their skill and to hone the science of teaching and to make connections with kids. So if you're going to emulate the teacher that taught you, it's probably not going to work. And second of all, it's probably, you're not going to be successful. You need to find out who you are going to be as a teacher. And that guy who served as my mentor, who really saved me from my first year, is the gentleman that is standing right next to you, right next to me.
He did pretty well.
So just going to tell you a little bit about his story, because we want to tell you where we came from. Because we really didn't have a choice, just like our kids. You know, we come from a district that has high poverty. Kids didn't have any choice where they were born. We didn't have any choice where we went to school, but we made it come together and we made it work. So we'll start by where we came from.
When I was where you were at in college, and it does just seem like yesterday, I was full of nerves. I wanted to go someplace where it was easy, and I had to think back to my building principal. And I'm here kind of selfishly because Fonseca said it best. You have to figure out where you can make a difference. And hopefully when you leave here today, if you already haven't figured out where you're going to student teach, figure out someplace where you can make a difference. My mom had me when she was just turned 15. And when kids had kids back at that time period, they didn't have any classes that you could go to. They didn't have online classes you could take. You were pretty well limited to being in poverty. After she had me, she forgot to stop doing two other things. She forgot to stop getting married and getting divorced, and she forgot to stop having other kids. So I was the oldest. I had to serve as a role model for my siblings. My mom was in and out of different situations, and I was totally on my own with 4 other brothers and sisters. And it was a teacher, it was an educator that made a difference for me. Could have went somewhere else, this gentleman. He could have ignored the situation that I was in. But when he was making his decision where he wanted to go to, he went to an Indian reservation. Grew up on Fort Totten Indian Reservation. I was a white kid amongst Native Americans. That time, it was politically correct now to call them Native Americans, but I was on an Indian reservation. And just barely surviving, having many opportunities to go down the wrong road. When you get out to your job, you're going to work with kids that have many opportunities to go down the wrong road. And you're going to be able to steer the course, or change the course, or modify the course. Struggled, and it just took one person. When they say one person can't change the world, they really can, to get me on the right track. Somehow or another, there was always food in our fridge. We had things that we didn't really get from my mom, all because of an educator that chose to go down a difficult path to make a difference with kids that didn't have, what a lot of kids have. So I'm going to challenge you to be the difference maker. I started to realize through that person that expected a lot more out of me than I expected of myself. Just one person can do that. Started making sure that when I did make poor decisions, was always there, made a connection. And when you go out and you choose that place where you can make a difference with kids, you have to build those connections. And that one connection can change the world. So I ended up graduating early from high school. I lost that connection with an educator. I graduated when I was 16 years old. I was going on a full ride scholarship at a college. I had a job as the assistant manager of McDonald's restaurant. I was the assistant manager at Trade Home Shoes. I was 16 years old with no expenses, making about $50,000 a year. And because I didn't have that one person that was making a difference for me, and I was on my own, I made some poor decisions. So I ended up joining the Army. We joined the Army the exact same day, February 3rd. We didn't know that until we were kind of sharing IDs one day. But I went into the military and again, found one person that could be a difference maker. And that person was the person that was my teacher. Found out that I didn't go on to college like I said I was going to do, that I didn't be the person that I committed myself to being. And so what we want to talk about today is finding the best placement for you. Not just so that you could have the best resume, not just so that you can get the job that you want, but so that you can have a successful career. And it all starts with your internship. It all starts with your student teaching. And one of the things that we always compare student teaching with that I don't think a lot of educators do is when you watch those medical shows, do they work just in 8-hour days when they're doing their internships? Do you know what shows I'm talking about? When you watch those medical shows on TV where they're learning how to be doctors, how early do they get to work? Early, right? When do they go home? Very, very late. Your internship is you working relentlessly, planning purposefully, but working relentlessly, not just 5 days a week, but 7 days a week. 18 hours a day is really what it's going to take. And what we're going to do is, through layers today, get you prepared to make sure that you have the foundation to do that. That you have the knowledge base to do that, so that you're thinking through as you decide where you're going to go, what it's going to look like when you're student teaching. Because the day you start, you blink your eye and you're going to be done. And within that time period, you want to make sure that you've built your skill set up so that no matter where you go, you can be that one person that can make a difference for people.
So you're thinking about student teaching. So what I want you to do, we're going to do a real quick think, pair, share. Because I can tell you guys are kind of intimidated by us. We ask these rhetorical questions that we expect answers to, and you guys are just like silent. So I'm going to have you do a little strategy real quick that we use in the classroom. We're going to do a think, pair, share. I'm going to ask you a question. But before I ask you this question, I don't want you to say a word. I want you to zone off into space. I want you to listen to that little voice in your head, and I want you to try to come up with an answer to the question that I pose. And then I'm going to give you about 30 seconds, and then I'm going to say pair. And I want you to turn to your partner, and I want you to talk about that little voice in your head that you heard talking to you about the question that we asked. So the question is this. You're going into student teaching. What do you expect out of student teaching? Or more importantly, what are the trepidations you have? What are the fears? What are the anxiousness that you have about student teaching? What is it that's bothering you about student teaching right now? Questions, answers, expectations? Think. All right, pair. Turn to your partner, right or left. Talk.
Any elbow partner.
Hey, you got it to 3. I'll tell you what you should be afraid of. You're going to have 25 kids. 22 to 30 kids, depending. I picked 25 because that's an even number in between the two. And have you ever tried to get 25 people to do the same thing? It's hard, isn't it? Now, I'm a middle school guy. Imagine 25 13-year-olds. You tell them to talk, what's going to happen? They're going to go nuts. And that's going to be great, but you want to stop it. And how do you stop it? Transitions, people. transitions and how you manage transitions. So let's find out what you guys thought about what you are afraid of, what you're thinking about, some of the expectations you have for student teaching. Okay, so who just had a birthday yesterday? Who had a birthday this week? Happy birthday! So you know what you get to do? Pick somebody. Come on, pick somebody. There you go. What did you and your partner talk about?
I said that I was nervous that I wouldn't know how to make a difference or know how to connect to the students.
Legitimate. It'll come. Pick somebody.
You, I guess.
I said that the most nerve-wracking part is trying to discipline the students and keeping control over the classroom, especially with the younger kids.
It's not more about this.
Okay, can you say it one more time a little bit louder?
I
You
would
have to
say-
practice using your teacher.
Yeah, if you can't talk in front of people, you guys need to get up and go to another major. To be honest with you, if you are shy right now and you cannot talk in front of a group this big,
You get to practice.
you get to practice. So go ahead.
I said that the most nerve-wracking part is disciplining the student and having really good classroom management with the students. So that's what's most nervous.
Okay. Pick somebody. Let's get this beach ball over here to this side. They're feeling pretty comfortable. The zone of proximity thing.
Okay, and the red shirt.
The red shirt. Which red shirt?
This one?
The red sweater? Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I talked about not knowing where I want to student teach, if I want to go home or stay here, and what the best decision.
How many of you want to go home? Okay, keep your hands up. How many of you want to go home because it's just easier to go home? Okay. That's something that we all have to face. When I had to decide where I was going to student teach, I had options. And the easiest option is to go home. Why? Because financially it makes sense, doesn't it? If you go home, it makes sense to go home because you have a place to stay, you have a place that, mom and dad can do your laundry, your friends are there, you might know some of the people that are there. But if you're going home just because it's comfortable and just because it makes financial sense, try to figure out a way around that obstacle. Because what you want to start thinking about now where you're going to student teach is not where is it the most comfortable, but where can I learn the most? Where can I develop my skills the best? Where can I learn this craft so that when I'm looking for a job, I'll set myself apart, not just because it was easy to go home, because that money that you're going to save just by going home because it's cost effective and more efficient, you're going to spend on trying to get a job somewhere else down the line. It's pay now or pay later. So if you can figure out a way to go someplace, whether it's Dallas or Houston or San Antonio or Austin or around here that might cost you some money, but you can make it work where you'll learn your craft better, that's worth the investment that it takes.
Good. Pick somebody. We'll take a couple more. Get back there. They feel real comfortable back there. Stand up so you can get a better view. Look at them all go like this. I don't want her to pick me.
The girl in the coral shirt.
The girl in the coral shirt. Which she had the headband?
Long hair. Yes.
Me?
No, behind you.
Oh, behind me.
Yes. All right, stand up. Because you're all the way back there.
I didn't really talk about it, but I think the boundary between your place in the classroom and where your teacher's place is, how far you can become a teacher, I guess.
Right.
I don't know how to.
It's like a logistical, how do you, you're
how,
a guest.
How much you can discipline and how much your teacher wants you to.
Got it.
Like that.
That's legitimate. Pick somebody.
And the blue jean jacket.
The blue jean jacket. Where's the blue jean jacket?
Right here.
Hey, all right, stand up.
We kind of said the same thing. We just don't really know what our role is in the classroom and if we're just going to be thrown in doing lessons and that kind of stuff.
So, without going into any more, you guys can breathe a sigh of relief that I didn't make you stand up and talk. But basically your questions are all going to break up into two camps. And I could basically summarize those two camps as things that you can control and things that you can't control. And believe it or not, those things that you can't control, they're going to work out. They're going to all work out in the end because every year millions of people do student teaching and they survive. That whole thing about what am I going to be able to do with the cooperating teacher? Well, there's a reason why we pick certain people to be cooperating teachers, because they're experienced about that. So 9 times out of 10, that's going to work itself out. But here's the one thing that's really troubling. The you thing. One of the things that Jeff and I firmly believe in is if you cannot articulate why you want to be a teacher, or you can't verbalize and you can't wrap your head around and be able to speak to another person about why you are doing something, then you probably shouldn't do it. So those fears and those things that you have in the back of your mind right now, those are okay. But if you're just sitting there kind of like with a blasé attitude about like, oh, I don't really know. I don't know if I have any fears or any trepidations or any questions about being a student teacher. You got to start thinking now, people. Right now is when it's going to get real. Because you're going to be out in front of an audience of real kids. And if you can't really articulate why you're doing this, then this position probably isn't for you. Because one of the things that we do with the student teachers when we meet with them, every semester we have about 100, 130 student teachers from all over the United States, from prestigious universities, come do student teaching with us in Aldine. And one of the very first things we tell them, as you get prepared to become a teacher, you better be able to tell us why you want to teach. You better tell us why you want to be able to get into this. Because if you can't, how do you expect anybody to give you a job? So you know that old cliche about, tell me about your philosophy of education. Well, I love kids. Well, you know what? Pedophiles love kids. How are you going to articulate that? How are you going to show in a daily fashion that you set yourself apart from everybody else? And if you haven't done that yet, you better go back to your dorms, you better go back to your apartment, and you better start thinking about it, because that's what's going to set you apart. And you know what? Once you do that, all of that other stuff about student teaching is going to take care of itself. It's going to be okay. It's going to be all right. But first of all, find out what you want to be and what you want to do.
When we wrote a book a few years ago, in order to write the book, we sent out surveys all across the United States, and we asked them a bunch of different things, but we asked them, what questions are you asking people that you want to hire? What are you listening for, and what do you want to hear? And 95% of the responses back, we got over 400 back, said, why do you want to be a teacher? So almost 100% of the time, why do you want a teacher is going to be a question that you're going to get asked. Why do you want to do this? And 95% of the time, those responses are, I love kids. So we're going to give you an assignment right now. It's a home opportunity that you finish on your own. And that is to start a journal. And in that journal, the header would be, why I want to be a teacher. And this is the perfect time to start that, because every single time you have one of those aha moments, guess what you would do in that journal? Jot it down. Every time there's a reason you want to be a teacher, you jot it down. You jot it down. You jot it down. Then when that question gets asked to you before an interview, you look at all of those sheets of why you really want to do this, and you figure out, how can I articulate why I want to do this job? How can I articulate this? We're going to have another activity that's kind of with an elbow partner. And we need you, we're going to give you another assignment. And that's to figure out if you're a teacher or if you're an educator. And they're two very different people. There's not one bad and one good. There's not one that's, worse than the other one. They're just two different people. And before you start student teaching, you have to figure out if you're a teacher or an educator. So turn to a different elbow partner and try to dialogue with each other what the difference is between a teacher and an educator, and understanding that one is not a negative. Okay? What's the difference between a teacher and an educator? Think for 15 seconds by yourself so you can articulate what you want to share with somebody. And then go ahead and talk with an elbow partner. The difference between a teacher and an educator. One of the things that you have to do in the classroom is give your students time to think. And a lot of times we ask a lot of questions and we don't give our students time to think about it, time to articulate, and time to dialogue with their peers and have those quality conversations with each other. Now, because of our time, we're not really able to do that with you all, but we're trying to model some of the things that you can do with your students when you're asking them certain things to find out what their background knowledge is. So somebody over here was volunteering somebody else. I saw a birthday. You were getting volunteered?
Yeah, I was volunteering her.
Okay, so she can pick who she wants to share what the difference is between a teacher and an educator. So you might want to pick her, but you don't have to.
Brittany is more than welcome.
Okay. Difference between a teacher and an educator.
I think the teacher is the person that, really goes through the instruction and teaches you what they're supposed to teach you. And the educator is the person that does all of that, but kind of teaches you more about yourself and teaches you about the people around you, teaches about where you can go in life and goes beyond the classroom, I guess is what it is.
Okay. Anybody have a different perspective or want to add to that? Yes, ma'am.
Backwards. I feel as if people who are focused mainly on teaching the subject will call themselves an educator, but somebody who's more focused on teaching the students more than just the subject will call themselves a teacher.
Okay.
That's how I see it.
You can own the term, so you can flip-flop it if you want to. So it doesn't matter as long as you know there's a difference. There's some of you in this room that are going to be really good at curriculum. You're going to know how to monitor, modify, adjust. You're going to know how to deliver instruction. When you go home at night, you're going to be thinking about lesson plans. You're going to be planning purposefully so that you can work relentlessly to instructionally develop your kids to be successful. That's what I call a teacher. They're great at instruction. They're good at taking kids wherever they are academically, and they're all in different places, and getting them to where they need to be. There are school districts in the state that are looking for teachers. We're really looking, though, for educators. And educators are teachers. But what we're really looking for in a lot of school districts, not just in Texas, but across the United States, are people that are willing to be mom, dad, coach, counselor, cheerleader, and they can teach as well. People that are committed and people that are trainable. People that, when they go home at night, an educator, a teacher goes home and starts thinking about lesson plans when those kids walk out the door. What educators think about when those kids walk out the door is, gosh, I know Mike probably is not going to eat again until he eats at school the next day. I know that Bobby has people that want him to join a gang, and I hope I did enough today so that he can say no to drugs, say no to gangs, say no to making poor decisions that are going to affect him for the rest of their lives. A teacher has to write a lot of emotional checks and understand that they're probably going to feel like they're going to bounce because you're just writing checks and writing checks and writing checks and not getting any deposits. You have to love the kids you don't like as an educator. Because if you don't like them, guess what? Probably most other teachers down the hallway don't either. You have to love the kids you don't like. That's what an educator does. Eventually you'll start to like them because when they realize that you love them and you care about them and you make those connections, they're not going to be as challenging to you because they know that you have a sense of urgency for them and you care about them. So your other assignment from us is to figure out what is it that you want to be. And if you want to be a teacher, guess what you need to start finding right now for a placement for student teaching? Is a place that needs you to be a great deliverer of instruction. Some place that needs you to monitor, modify, adjust, know the curriculum, move the kids academically where they need to be, but maybe doesn't need all those other things. If you want to be an educator and you want to get a job as an educator, you need to find places that will foster that development. Okay? You need to find places that will foster that development. How many of you instantly, and I mean instantly, if I were to ask you to name your best teacher, could you raise your hand, name your best teacher? How many of you instantly could do that? Okay, Fonz, do you want to pick up at this point?
How many of you can instantly identify some of the worst teachers that you ever had? See, there's a reason why we're in education. One, because we had great teachers, or two, because we had bad teachers that we think we could do better than them. You know what I want to do is I want to give you a practical demonstration, illustration of the difference between a teacher and an educator as it related to me in the position that I served in as a principal. So I'm going to set the stage. Here I am as a principal of a middle school, and you know, it's an urban district. About 85% of my kids are Hispanic. About 97% of them qualify for free reduced lunch, but we're a high-performing school district. We do a lot of things that you probably read in your textbook that state that the research states is what you're supposed to do in a high-performing school. One of which is we had to have standardized homework, because Marzano states that homework is practice, and practice can be done at home. You're not supposed to give new stuff. You know, it's practicing what you have learned already. And we had, as a department plan, a certain percentage that we required all of our kids by department to get on their homework. And it was broken down by teachers. Marzano also states that what effective schools, what they do is they always measure themselves. Lots of data, lots of data. So I had this young teacher. She came from the Midwest, came from a suburban area. Demographic was totally different than what she was experiencing in my district, at my school, and she was struggling. And one of the ways that she was struggling was all of our teachers, we benchmarked our homework assignments, you know, for the week. Miss Smith had 97% return rate. Miss Rodriguez had 89%. And, you know, we celebrated our victories. And here she was, all the way at the bottom every week. And I had to have that very, very critical conversation with her. I called her into my office and I said, "What's going on?" Not in a bad way, just, "What's going on?" And she just vented out her frustration. She said, "Mr. Fonseca, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm giving out homework and I'm telling them they have to do it, and they just won't do it." I could have given her the textbook answer, and I could have told her of all the reasons why the other teachers are getting her to do her homework. But I said, "This is what I want you to do. I'll get a sub for you tomorrow, but I want you to go into the classrooms and I want you to go see the other teachers in your department and see what they do. And then come back to me the next day, we'll talk." She spent all day observing classrooms. She came back, we had our little meeting again the next day, and I asked her, and I said, "What did you see in the classroom?" And this is what she said. She said, "You know what, Mr. Fonseca, those kids genuinely like their teacher." It's not any discipline management plan. It's not any, "You better do your homework." Why? Because if you don't, you'll get a bad grade. So what? If you don't get a good grade, you're not going to graduate. I don't care. If you don't graduate, you're not going to go to college. So what? If you don't go to college, you're not going to get a new car. You're not going to get a house. You're not going to do this. You're not going to do that. All those things don't mean anything to my kids. It doesn't mean anything to them. So her reasoning, remember when I said you emulate the teacher that taught you? She was trying to be the teacher that taught her, who happened to be a teacher. She wasn't an educator. She didn't build relationships with kids to make those kids want to do the homework for her. And without even saying anything, she got it. And you know what? She's a very, very good teacher. A very good teacher. Because she understood the difference between being a teacher, a deliverer of content, and an educator who actually takes kids and their future in her hand and makes herself responsible for them. And guess what started to happen when she started making those connections? You know, she started going to the kids' football games. She started going to the kids' volleyball games. Started going to the cheerleading, anything she could. "Man, miss, I didn't believe that you'd come see me play football." Well, what'd you expect? And then they started doing their homework for her. It's as simple as that. That's a practical demonstration of what the difference between a teacher and an educator is. An educator forges those relationships to make kids feel successful. And if a kid feels successful, they can accomplish anything. They can accomplish anything. This kind of segues to what Jeff and I were going to talk about in our last phase, to paint you a little picture of what is required of you as a teacher. Because believe it or not, you know what? We have it easy in Aldine because we know what we have. We have a very homogeneous population. One of the first things that people do when they come and interview with me is they're sitting in front of me, "So why have you considered Aldine?" "Well, I like the diversity." Wrong answer. It's not diverse. What you're saying is it's different to you. There's no diversity in my district. It doesn't matter whether they're black, blue, green, black, red, purple, brown, or whatever. They're all poor. They come from a lower social economical background. And Ruby Payne says that poverty transcends race. So you can take a kid who grew up on an Indian reservation, and you can take a kid who grew up in Watts, California, and a kid who grew up in the 5th Ward of Houston, and a kid who grew up in Appalachia. They all share the same characteristics, but they look different. And you have to find a way to make the connections with that experience that you don't have any idea about. And that's what you have to look at when you start looking at the real big picture. Because those motivators and those ways that you're going to try to push buttons for kids, if you don't share their same experience, it's not going to connect. And that's what happened with me as a first-year teacher. My message and the recipients were not connecting. And until I changed, until I made the conscious decision to change and meet them on their level, did things start clicking. So what I'm trying to say is this. There are kids like that everywhere you go. Not just in Aldine, which just happens to have the majority of our population like that, but the schools that you went to have kids like that. You know, the kid that sat there in the back of the school, the back of the classroom, that nobody paid attention to, the kid that everybody thought was weird, the kid that everybody thinks is different, they're in your classroom. It doesn't matter what environment you go to. Now the question is this, are you going to treat that person just like you would anybody else? Like Jeff said, it's hard to like the kids that nobody likes, but you have to. You have to. If you don't, you're not an educator.
So, we asked you a couple questions, we had you push save, and now we're going to bring them back up, okay? So when I asked you, think about your best teacher and you can name it. Just give me a volunteer. Somebody volunteer to name their best teacher. Yes, ma'am.
It was my art teacher in 3rd grade.
What name?
Watson.
Watson, and what grade were you?
3rd.
3rd grade. And how old are you now?
21.
21. And so when you were in 3rd grade, you're 6, 7?
8.
8? Okay, 8.
I was like, what?
8, and you're 21 now. And what made Mr. Watson? Miss Watson good?
She genuinely motivated us, I guess, to do it and encouraged our creativity.
Okay, motivated you and encouraged your creativity. Somebody over here. Yes, ma'am.
I had
Nice and loud.
my junior year in high school, my calculus teacher, he taught in 2 schools, the magnet school and then the public school.
Okay, and what was his name?
Mr. Trevino.
Trevino.
And the school I went to was predominantly Hispanic, so he was able to connect with the students because he would joke around about things that we all knew about.
Okay, so he made a connection with you. Okay, it was relevant. Okay, one more. Somebody, yes ma'am, way in the back, thank you.
I had the same band director from 6th through graduation, and so her name was Miss Pinoli, and because I had her for so long, I was really able to develop a really strong relationship with her, so that when things were not going the way I wanted them to, I was able to just go to her office and vent to her, and she understood everything because she had built such a relationship with me and my family.
Built a relationship with not just you, but who else?
My brother was in band, my mom was president of the band boosters, and so she had spent a lot of time with her, and my dad too.
Okay. Now, we believe in equal opportunity. Name the names. So we've talked about the good teachers. So let's talk about some of those teachers that weren't so good and why. Who's willing to share that? Okay, you. Yes.
My sophomore year AP World History teacher.
And who's that?
Mrs. Deering.
Mrs. Deary. Because we're equal opportunity. We don't discriminate against good or bad. Go ahead.
It was the first AP class that a lot of us had taken, so we were all really nervous, and we had a college level textbook that none of us knew how to read, and instead of offering us any supplemental material, she just counted down how many pages we had to read a day before the test. She's like, there's 5 chapters, you have to read 27 pages a day, go, and never offered us any help.
So didn't really deliver instruction, didn't monitor instruction, definitely for sure didn't adjust instruction. It was more independent. Who in the back? Yes, ma'am.
Mine was my 6th grade English teacher. His name was Mr. Poole, and he told us on the first day of class that most of us weren't going to be in his class by the end of the year because we were all going to fail.
Okay. So set you up for success early on, right? here's what you all have to understand. Someday, in the future, you're going to get an opportunity for some other class down the road, 20, 30, 40 years from now, to be asked the question, who is your favorite teacher? Who is the teacher that you felt was horrible? And guess what kids are going to get an opportunity to do? Identify you as either what? One or the other. You're either going to be that teacher. Now, I'm asking you when you're 21 years old. When you're 81 years old, who's still going to be your favorite teacher? You're going to forget him or her? Are you going to forget Miss Watson? No. No matter how old you get, you're not going to forget those teachers. So far you have a couple of assignments. Why you want to be a teacher, and you're going to jot down your bullets, right? The other assignment I want to add to those two are interview people and ask them what made your good teachers good. What are things that they did that made them stand out? So you're going to hear about connections. You're going to hear about high expectations. You're going to have a list of different things that made good teachers good. And of course, a few pages later, you're going to ask people about what types of teachers. The bad teachers. What made them bad? Low expectations. They didn't care. They didn't instruct. They didn't teach. And what do you want to do with those things? Make sure that you constantly refer to those things because you don't want to drift that way. You want to avoid those things. Being sarcastic. Sometimes people go out and they observe a classroom and there's somebody in there that's sarcastic to a student and 2 or 3 kids start laughing, "Hey, knucklehead, I'm talking to you." And that person thinks it's fine. But there's also other people in that room that think, "God, what an idiot." And even if that kid that's being called an idiot is fine with it and he thinks it's funny, the rest of the people don't. So, using sarcasm may seem fine and you may be okay with it. You may feel like it's, okay with you, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's okay for everybody else. When you have those lists, they're a reference point. They're a point that constantly when I start drifting, what do I want to continue to do so that I can be the very best person I can be? So you start building your skill set. You select your place where you're going to student teach. Then what? What's the first thing you should do if you get the information about where you're going to student teach? What should you do next? Do your research. Really do your research. Find out as much as you can, and we always suggest layering it. Find as much as you can about the campus. And you can tell a lot about the campus by doing what? Visiting the campus website. Learning what is important around there just by looking at the pictures. If you see a lot of pictures with parents working with kids, guess what's important? Parents. If you see a lot of pictures about the community is important. If you see a lot of pictures about the kids are important. Figure out what's important around there. Start looking at the district curriculum. And then, of course, make sure you make contact with your cooperating teacher. And to solve the problem where you don't know what you're getting into, ask right away, "Hey, what's my role here? What is it that you expect from me? How am I going to learn?" And what you want to do is, regardless of what type of teacher you have, you're going to learn from that experience. I was at a school district. It was the University of the Cohawks. It's in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, and the name escapes me. I'm getting old. Coe College. I was in Coe College. They had 22 student teachers that were there for a seminar. And they met on Wednesday, and it was the 3rd week of them student teaching. And each one of the people, Terry had her group come in, and they started off, and they talked about so far from last week to this week, how was their week? And a young lady got up and said, "Well, today was horrible. My teacher didn't show up. They forgot to call a sub for me. I had 2 kids that were playing around when they came into class first period, and next thing I know, there's an all-out fight in my classroom. And of course I got in trouble. The principal wasn't too happy with the way I handled it, and she just went on. It was just, I can't get over that. It's just horrible, horrible, horrible experience for me. Then the next young man said, it was not good. I almost got in a fight with the dad. So why'd you almost get in a fight with the dad? Well, because it was skip day for the seniors this semester, and the policy is if they skip, they get zeros. They don't get any opportunity to make up their work. They get straight zeros. And I told the dad that. And they went so on, and Terry stopped him with then the third person was, I was at a high school, and 2 kids were arguing, and one kid got mad. He went and got in his truck and tried to run the other kid over, and I had to run out of the way. And Terry started getting embarrassed. And I said, stop. I said, God, what a great experience. What a great week you've had. And they're looking at me like, what the hell is he talking about? I know this is on tape. What the heck is he talking about? Can you edit that out? Okay. And they're looking at me, and I said, okay, what did you learn from it? And I wanted them to think for just a second. So I started with the young lady that was a band teacher. And she said, what I really should have learned from it is I should be able to teach that class whether there's a sub there or not. Because they're really my kids now, and I should have been prepared for that. The second thing I learned is when those 2 kids came in, they were flipping each other's bill on their hats. If I would have stopped that immediately, the chances of them getting into a fight wouldn't have existed. So if I would have been more proactive instead of being reactive, I wouldn't have had that fight. Then I said, what else? Well, when they started fighting, I ran out of the room to get the teacher next door. And there was another fight that happened because this fight started happening, this fight over here started happening. So by the time she got back with another teacher, there's 2 fights in the classroom. Okay? You're a student teacher's worst nightmare, right? I said, what'd you learn from that? Well, there's a little button on the wall. I could have pushed for help, and I didn't know that. Now I do know that. And I said, so what did you learn from that? I should have been more proactive, and I had a recap. I should have been more proactive about the situation. I should always have kids identify each period in case there's ever an emergency, my go-to people that I know that can go get assistance. I should have known that that button was there. So here's what she learned from that that's going to make her a better teacher, is all of that. So when those things happen when they're her own class, guess what's not going to happen? Kids aren't going to be coming in, flipping each other's bill. She's going to be more proactive. She's going to have better routines and procedures in place. Then the next young man, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but the next young man said, you know what I learned about it? It wasn't really my place to talk about school policy. What I should have done is let the parent know, hey, sir, I appreciate your concern as a parent. You're up here. I'm really just, this is the school's policy. This is administrative policy. I just have to follow it. Probably the best advice I could give you is talk to the campus administrator. So then what he did do is he took the situation they had no control over and gave it to somebody that had control over. All of this to say, I hope you have bad days. Now, hopefully you plan purposefully, you plan for them, you work relentlessly, but no matter how much you do all of those things, things aren't always going to work out. Lessons that you think about and plan and think are going to be perfect, some prior knowledge isn't in place. So what are you going to do? You need to have with-itness, okay? With-itness is that ability to monitor, adjust quickly, and figure out how can I get them going in the right direction immediately. And you can't ever let them see a sweat. They always have to understand that, there's always a plan in place, even when there's not. How are you going to do that? You have to make sure that you think about everything that could go wrong and plan for what if it does. Because those bad days will make you the very best teacher that you can be when you get your job. Fonseca, do you want to add anything? Okay. So you get your job, you start student teaching, you start planning, and you start gradually taking over. Now, I'm not sure what model of student teaching you do. If you do a gradual release where you just start consuming some classes. Our district usually works with all their universities and really does what's called a co-teach model. And a co-teach is what more and more universities are doing, and what we really do to help you develop is from the first time you come in, regardless of what model, instead of sitting there stationary in a chair watching what's going on, what do you think you really could be doing? Moving around, monitoring what's going on, helping kids as you don't need to wait 2 weeks before you can help kids, regardless of the model that your university uses. You could start helping kids immediately. Let that teacher know, hey, I want to come in full force. I want to start working with kids. I want to learn. I know I'm going to make mistakes. I know you're going to let me make mistakes. You got to let them know that. I know you're going to let me make mistakes, but I'll listen. I'm going to be a sponge. I'll be receptive. And then you have to get out to other classrooms and watch other teachers. The mistake that too many people make is they ask the principal or they ask their cooperating teacher, who's the best teachers around? And then what do the student teachers generally do? They just go and watch the best. It sounds great in theory, but a lot of times those best teachers, they've gotten better over a long period of time. And you don't always have to watch the best teachers to learn. Sometimes just going into any classroom, sometimes you can learn from the worst teacher what not to do. How not to have transitions, how not to ask open-ended questions without properly planning for giving them an opportunity to think and do inquiry learning. So go out and see other people teach and then figure out, okay, what works for me? What is it that I can take from them? I'm not going to be Fonseca. Raul's an amazing teacher. He's one of the best I've ever seen, if not the best. But I can't teach that way. So I stole ideas from him, and I made them work for Jeff McCanna, but I had to make them Jeff McCanna's ideas. And that's what you have to do when you're student teaching, is take and take and take and steal and steal and steal, and then figure out how can I redesign this so that it works for me. But when I say it works for me, who do I really mean it works for? The kids. It's about the kids. I always tell people when we do things across the United States that I want somebody who's a great singer in here. Raise your hand. Great singer. Okay, awesome. Who's horrible at singing? Okay. So I want somebody that's horrible to get up and just sing a chorus line. Just sing something. So I'll practice, and you'll hear how bad I am. Whenever my wife gets slightly agitated with me, it happens periodically. I can sing something to her, and I think that she thinks I think I'm really a good singer when I know I'm not. But all my kids think that I really think I can sing. So I'll start, she'll be angry or she'll be agitated, and I start singing, why do birds suddenly appear? And because I'll stretch it out a little bit, it sounds so horrible that no matter how bad she is, guess what she has to do? She has to start laughing. When I do that, I'm not comfortable with that. I'm not comfortable with singing. I wasn't comfortable in singing in front of my kids, but I did it all the time. Because I'm not Jeff McCanna when I'm in the classroom. Guess what I am? I'm the best teacher I can be for my kids. So you're not yourself all the time when you're in the classroom. You're the best actor or actress for whatever that lesson takes. And it just takes you opportunities to practice that. You have to practice those things as you're student teaching. Now, they're not going to know that it makes you nervous and sick to your stomach and gives you a headache when you're practicing, because you're going to do it so much that they're just going to think, oh, this person's crazy. They're crazy. They come in and start singing, and they're dancing, or they do weird things to get you going, and you may be uncomfortable with it, but if it works, guess what? It works.
So I guess we're at the end. So we have to ask you, do you have any questions? And there's a couple of other things we have to do before you leave. Remember, you guys owe me some sort of Aggie war hymn cry or something like that that I can YouTube. Like, don't worry, my daughter's the only one who's going to see it. I'm not going to put it on I don't have a Facebook account, but seriously, my daughter would love it. So you guys are going to be held to that, okay? Can you do it? Okay, all right. Do you guys have any questions? After all of this stuff that you've heard from us, we're kind of all over the place. We talked about student teaching. We talked about teaching in an urban environment. We talked about getting a job, setting yourself apart from everybody else. We talked about teachers versus educators. What kind of questions do you guys have for us? Yes, ma'am.
I've heard it both ways, but doesn't matter where we go student teach. Like, should we go student teach where we want to get a job, or if we just go, like you said, where we're going to learn the most, are we going to have trouble in other districts?
Well, that's a good question, and I mean, I really don't have a set forward answer for you, but I will tell you from my experience as an HR guy and having to hire hundreds and hundreds of teachers, you're standing in front of me in an interview. The only context you have, the only experience you have is what? Your student teaching. If you decide to do your student teaching where you want to get that job, what happens if the job falls through? Or more importantly, what have you done to set yourself apart from all the other people who are applying for that job? Because you want to go in there and you want to tell that principal, I went to this one place and this is what I learned about being a great teacher. And I know this school inside and out, and this is how I think I could fit. So, I mean, I don't have the right answer for you. It could be one way or the other, but I'm giving you the human resources perspective from it. What is that principal going to see in you that makes you someone they should consider over anybody else? Is it going to be because you did your student teaching there? Maybe. Or is it going to be because you did your student teaching at a really, really good place that really got you prepared to be the best teacher? Some districts really don't. Some schools may not care about you being a good teacher. They may care about you being a good member of the community, how you fit in. You guys know what I'm talking about. Sometimes you don't have a choice in that in those small communities. It's up to you.
And I think each of you is going to be able to answer that question yourselves when you do the research. And you don't be afraid to make those contacts. If I really had my heart set on this certain school district and I had an opportunity, I would contact the people there, or use the professors that you have here for advice. They're the ones that know you the best. They know your program the best. They'll give you the best advice. For us, we love hiring our student teachers because they're really not like first-year teachers because they've already been with us a year. 99 times out of 100, they end up getting a job at the same school they student taught because we plan that purposefully so that when they go into their first year, they'll already have been there a full semester. We have 150 student teachers right now this semester. In January, come second semester, almost all of them will, if they choose to stay, which it looks like they will, get a job in Aldine. They're going to then just, in the middle of the year, not have to uproot. They're going to, get a job in most cases at the same school. But you have to figure out if that's best for where you want to go. If you're in a small town and it's a small school, chat with that building principal if that's okay with the professors that are here. I think if you student teach where you want to get a job, that helps because you get a chance to really showcase your talent. But if you don't develop because they don't have systems in place to help coach you up, you're not going to get a job there, because that's a semester-long interview, and you only want to grow up. Remember, people, no matter what questions they ask you, they're listening for two things. They're listening for commitment. Are you committed to doing whatever it takes? And it takes a lot. And are you trainable? Every single one of my principals would take somebody that's here over somebody that's here if this person here is going to grow, if they're going to develop, if they're going to be part of a team. They will take them if they're trainable. Commitment, trainable.
Anything else? Yes, ma'am.
What is one of your worst experiences, and how did you turn it around to learn from it?
Worst experiences as far as any point in my career?
A teacher, preferably.
Yeah, the point that I almost went back home to Ohio crying with my tail between my legs. I really thought I was going to fail because I just was not connecting with the kids. And not until I realized that I need to make connections with these kids that it really started clicking for me.
I think the worst experience that I've had, and periodically I will have these, is having to let people go, terminate them for making bad decisions. We're all human, and I will tell you, I'm the first one to admit that I've made mistakes. You all, right now, as you go and start your student teaching, no matter where you do it, you are no longer an A&M college student. Once you set foot at that campus, you're a teacher. You could throw on the student part if you want, but guess what? You're a teacher that represents that school. You have to think like it, you have to act like it, you have to walk like it, you have to talk like it. Your Facebook page, if you have one, has to be like that. When you're at the grocery store, you are always interviewing for a job. You can't go and play around and clown around, anymore. At least within 300 miles. You have to pick your places. And I mean that, I say that kind of jokingly, but you're a teacher that people look up to. Think back to when you were a kid and you saw a teacher act like a fool. Did you ever forget that? So you have to get to the mindset that from this point on, you are an educator or a teacher, and that's what you have to be held to. The other thing is when you are applying for jobs. Every place in Texas is going to ask you a similar question. Have you ever done this? Okay? Have you ever been arrested? It doesn't matter what for. Have you ever done this? And to add to that is I have to periodically not hire great people because they don't disclose things on their application. Because we all know people make mistakes. If you make a mistake when you're filling out an application, when it comes to that question, what should your answer be? Yes. If you've ever done anything wrong, the answer needs to be yes, I did it. There is no such thing for teachers as expungement. There is no such thing for teachers as sealed. There's no such thing as things that happened before 18. I got a careless driving when I was 16. Every year when DPS runs my fingerprint, guess what shows up? I got a careless driving when I was 16. If I was going to be a banker, it wouldn't show up. If I was going to be an accountant, it wouldn't show up. But because I'm an educator, every single thing that I have done is going to be pulled up by the criminal background check, by Safe Schools, and it's going to be by your fingerprint. Now, don't fret.
It's not
If you got a DUI, you put yes, and you learned from it. If you shoplifted, if you wrote a bad check, if you did something, you can't go back in time and change that, can you? But what you can do is learn from that. Now, when that question comes up on your online application, campuses can't see that. The building principals can't see your answer to that question. Only the HR department will. So you don't have to worry about, is that going to taint me from getting a job? The only thing that will ever keep you from getting a job is non-disclosure. Now, if you have a felony, that's something that you want to be upfront about with the HR department and see if you could work through that. So, just to recap, hardest thing ever is having to let people go because they make poor decisions. Not hiring people that you know could be amazing because they make poor decisions. Not hiring people because they don't disclose something on the online application because they made a poor decision. Those are hard because you look at somebody that's 21, 22 years old and you're taking their career away from them. You are. And you don't think, and probably they may not get a career because of those poor decisions. So think like a teacher, act like a teacher, be a teacher. I'm not talking about wearing the oversized sweatshirt with school on it. Okay, I'm not talking that. I'm just talking about making good professional decisions. Clean up your Facebook now.
Yeah, dude.
Before you get with your kiddos.
Yeah, you guys need to do that right now. I mean, because that's they're as Jeff stated, it's not what you did. It's whether you're truthful. That's the whole point. That's the whole point. One more question. Anything else? Okay, well, great. Then we have a wrap-up activity.
Yeah,
Was there one?
guys, anybody in the back have anything that you want us, that we're neglecting to mention? Anything at all in the back? Janet, do you have anything that you think we're skipping out on? before the wrap-up activity, we really want to make sure you totally understand this. You are going into the most beneficial field or career you ever could imagine. I wrote emotional checks for 5 years. In 5 years, I didn't get one single deposit. Not one. And I felt like, am I wasting my time? Am I not doing what I need to do? Am I really making a difference? And it took 5 years before I got my first deposit. It wasn't a 5-paragraph essay. It wasn't a Hallmark card. It was just a sheet of paper. It was this thin. It was handwritten. And it said, I'm in college today, and I owe it all to you, thanks, Reginald Wright. That thing took 5 years to get something like that. Now, in my office, I have, from teaching a little over 3 years, deposits just from those. The only way you can get in that deposit is if I taught you 3 years. That took 5 years to get this is now over a foot tall. And I'm not telling you that because I want you to think, oh, Jeff McKenna was a great teacher. I'm telling you that because it took 5 years to get something like this. It took 5 years before those deposits start coming in. So you have to understand that your investment in these kids takes time to get that return. It takes time. But if you care for kids, if you love the kids you don't like, if you plan purposefully and work relentlessly, the difference you'll make will go on forever. It's a great opportunity, and you couldn't do anything better, ever, than be a teacher.
So we've got 2 activities. One, hopefully, it's going to be real quick, and then remember you guys owe me a Aggie hymn or whatever the heck you do, whatever you guys do. Okay, so I'm thinking of a number between 1 through 19. Okay, so let me. Okay, pick a number.
7.
7. What's the number?
10.
10. So, let's see. Between 7 and 10, let's pick 8. What I did was I counted the rows. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. There's 19 rows. So row number 8 is going to be the row that I all want everybody to stand up. Here's row 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Stand up for me, please. Everybody in row 8. Okay, before we leave, what I want you guys to do is I want you to just tell me real quick one thing that you learned from this presentation. It can be short and sweet to the point. Nothing real fast. Let's start right there.
One thing that I learned.
Yeah. Or anything that you want to say. It stunk. I didn't like it. It was wonderful.
I actually like the examples of the bad days that you gave, and it teaches you to learn to just like kind of calm down for a second, take a second, and kind of think about what it is you really ought to be doing.
Thank you. You can say it.
I like to explain an educator and a teacher, and also possibly student teacher.
Thank you.
I learned to not be nervous to student teach.
Thank you.
I like you have to go out of your comfort zone to learn and grow.
Thank you.
I also like the difference of teacher and educator and how ways to be a better teacher.
You know you have to stand up if it's redundant. I'm just kidding.
I liked the tips that y'all gave us, like the journaling of why we wanted to be a teacher.
Okay.
I learned it's all about building connections with the students.
That it's okay to make mistakes as a student teacher, and that's how we're going to learn from it.
I liked how to not give up even if you don't get a deposit until 5 years down the road.
I also like the difference between the educator and the teacher, and just to like separate yourself on your resume and stuff.
I also like to talk about the deposits because like the whole reason I want to be a teacher is to make that difference, and I don't want to be like discouraged right off the bat.
I also like the difference between the teacher and the educator, and kind of lets me reflect on my own philosophy of teaching.
I liked the tip about being proactive when we're student teachers so that it's encouraging for us to keep going even if it gets hard.
I liked what y'all said about going somewhere where you're going to make a difference, and that makes me just feel a lot more comfortable about where I'm going to go to student teach.
You guys are wonderful. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Give yourselves
Okay, you have to stop recording now. Okay, so what are you guys going to do for me? Hold on. What are you guys going to do? Are you guys going to just say like howdy or what? Okay, so is it like a long drawn out thing? It just needs to be quick. It just needs to be quick. Is there like a yell leader or something? Okay, on the count of 3, you guys have to say, my daughter's name is Okay, so what are you going to do? All right, Bethany, this is Texas A&M, September 3rd, September 4th, 1993. All of these ladies are going to say hi or do something for you. You're going to love it. 1, 2,